Okay, so last time we were discussing the Berchot Torah, and what we said was that just like any other thing that we benefit from in Hashem's world, like any food or drink, or we make a bracha beforehand, so the same with learning Torah, right, which is really the ultimate benefit, the ultimate enjoyment. And we have the brachot of La'asok B'Divrei Torah, B'Harivna, and then Asher B'Char Banu. So we had started looking at the idea of La'asok, that we don't just L'mod Torah, but we really are Osek, like that we are really getting into it, that it becomes something that we're completely engaged with. Mm-hmm. And we mentioned the idea of the word V'Ha'arivna, right? That we should, and that the multiple meanings of that word, that when we talk about what we want Torah to be for us, that we want it to be a guarantor, we want Hashem to be a guarantor for us, that we want it to be sweet, that we want it to be mixed in with every aspect of our lives. I think that's pretty much what we got to last time. So I'd like to continue with this idea, going through the text of the bracha. We say, Baruch At Hashem Elokeinu Melech HaOlam Asher Kiddushanu B'Mitzvotav V'Tzivanu La'asok B'Divrei Torah V'Ha'arevna Hashem Elokeinu Et Divrei Toratecha B'Finu V'Amecha Beit Yisrael. And we mentioned also, I believe, that we're making it a communal sort of thing.
Where are you?
The bracha is in source 1, on page 1. I'm in Bet.
Yeah.
So that we don't only ask for ourselves. We're not only making this bracha, whereas any other bracha, Berchot Hananin, we would have to make for ourselves. But here, we are including all of Am Yisrael. It's not that we're being poter other people from making their bracha by doing this, right? Unless the Chazan can, if he says it out loud and so on, but generally everyone makes their own Berchot Torah. But the idea that we are including in our bracha all of Am Yisrael, because the Torah is enhanced the more people study it, and the more people study it together, and it becomes sort of the glue that binds Am Yisrael together. Right? And then we can continue that not just us. So we mentioned that we're going across, but also we're going vertically, right? Horizontal and vertical. That us and our v'tze'etzaenu, v'tze'etza'ei Amecha Beit Yisrael, our descendants and the descendants of all Am Yisrael. So we want this venture to continue for generations and generations to the end of time, or as we've discussed that we don't really know what that'll look like, but and then we close with Kulanu Yodei Shemecha V'Lomedei Toratecha Toratecha Lishma. So I want to take a moment and talk about this idea of lishma. Right? A lot of times we say we're learning Torah lishma. Why? Is there a test? No, there's no test. Why are we learning it lishma? Right? So what exactly does it mean to learn Torah lishma, for its own sake, literally? What does that mean to us? Right? Very strange idea. If you talk to people in the secular world, in the non-Jewish world, they say, I don't understand, you're just learning it. Why? Is there a test? No, there's no test. Right? And so what's going on here? What are we doing? What are we coming out on a rainy morning when we could be cozy in our homes drinking tea and come out in the rain to learn Torah together? What's the idea? So you
would think it's not reward and not punishment for just stuff.
Yeah, there's no what we would call to'elet, right? It's not. The Gemara in Brachot, in source 6, Aleph on your sheets, even distinguishes between, if you look in that source, I'm sorry, the source. Yeah. Do you need one?
Yeah, sorry. I'm supposed to come from home.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Certainly. I'm sorry, where was it? Sorry, I'm skipping, I'm sorry, I'm not in source 6, I'm on page 4. In source 8 Gimel. So, what does it mean that the bracha is, learning Torah is lishma? So, the Chatam Sofer, he gives another possibility. That rather than lishma, it could be l'shem shamayim. What would be the idea there? L'shem shamayim means because of some other purpose, perhaps shmirat hamitzvot, right? We have to learn in order to do. But the Chatam Sofer here, he says that shenizagdik tchila lashon Torah lishma. I'm at the end of the first line. Ma'u lashon lishma v'lo amar l'shem shamayim. Ela yesh Torah l'shem shamayim mamash. Ach ein kavanato ela kedei lakayem hamitzvot. Right? So when we learn what we say l'shem shamayim, he calls that to be mekayem the mitzvot. V'leidah halacha ech ya'aseh hama'aseh, how to do what we need to do. וכיוון שכל עצמו של אותו העסק איננו לא לקיים המצווה, איננו עדיף מקיום המצווה גופה, בעדינה דלא עסיק בי, ולא מגינה ולא מצלי. So what does he say? He says basically that the kiyum of learning Torah in order to do a mitzvah is not really so much greater than just doing the mitzvah. It's just sort of a necessary step in doing the mitzvah.
Isn't you say the bracha because the actual learning, we don't say because the actual learning is also a mitzvah? Not just for the purpose of doing the mitzvah that we're learning about, or to help us know what to do,
right?
But that the actual learning itself is a mitzvah.
So this is what he's saying really, is that it depends on what your kavanah is. Because if when we are learning, our kavanah is that we want to learn to do, then no, then really it's not such, meaning it's not considered what we would say Talmud Torah Lishma. Okay, and this, I a little bit went out of order. We'll get back to the reason he says this, of what the mashmaut is, but basically the idea of not making a bracha when you learn Torah is what he's responding to here, in the Gemara and Nedarim. The idea of not making a bracha shows, well, I'm not doing this because it has a value in and of itself. So that sort of speaks to the importance of the bracha of Talmud Torah. And he continues, says, Ikar mitzvat esek haTorah hu mitzvah b'fnei atzmo. Yeah, that the Ikar, the main part of Talmud Torah, is by itself. Right? Not to do, but for the sake of learning Torah. Hagod b'yom v'layla ulahamik ula'ayen b'chol tot'oteha ומובעיה, כי עמקו מחשבותיה, כי בחוקותיי תלכו, שתהיה עמלים בתורה, לא לבד לידע המצווה, בשעה שצריך לה, אלא דרוש וקבל שכר. היינו, הדרשה עצמה היא השכר. So, what is it? Not in order to do the mitzvah, not for the practical purpose, that's not why, but rather for the idea of drosh ukabel schar, that the idea of we're going to do this in order just to do this, just to be learning it. That in and of itself has value. That's the idea of lishma. And he continues with nachat ruach lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, v'zeu osek lishma shel Torah. It gives nachat ruach to Hashem, gives some nachas, whatever that means for Hashem to have nachat ruach, but the idea that learning is an end in and of itself. It's also a means to keep mitzvot, because we can't keep the mitzvot without learning. But there is a value just in learning, right? And it builds our connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So, we're going to get back to that idea. But first, I want to touch on another idea, which is when we eat, when we drink, we make a bracha each time, right? And the whole topic of halacha about hesech hadat, of removal of your intention. When do you need to make a new bracha, right? And so on. How much time has to pass in between bites and so on. Right? It's a whole area of halacha. But with Torah, we make a brachat Torah once at the beginning of the day, and that's it. And it lasts the entire day. Right? So the question comes up, why are we, I would say, limiting the brachot? If making a bracha and acknowledging that it's lishma is so important, then why do we limit ourselves to one brachat HaTorah at the beginning of the day?
It's a continuous mitzvah.
Yeah.
In other words, it fills your day, even if you're not learning it from the Sefer, because you are doing the mitzvot that are part of the Torah. So it's just continuous.
So that's exactly what it says in the Gemara in Brachot, and it's, well,
if I'm not mistaken, is that why it's sort of it's, and also you get pieces of the learning after you immediately make the bracha.
Yeah, we're
In
gonna get
other
to
words,
it.
those psukim.
Yes.
So it's like it's starting you off already with
Right,
that
and
mitzvah.
so we do that sort of to cover all the bases, but many posts consider that's not necessary, even because our whole life, our whole day is filled with Torah by doing the mitzvot, by having it in our minds. And if you take a look in Tosfos basically says pretty much just what you said. The idea of that Torah is different because we never take our minds off of it.
Right.
But if you take a look on page 3, Rav Soloveitchik has I just want to read it out loud because it's so beautiful the way he writes. And he, based on the Tosfot in source 6 bet, he writes as follows. He says, apparently there are two kinds of awareness. Right? Because we talk about Hesech Hadat, what's your awareness? Is your mind still on it? So he says the first is an acute awareness. Clearly this is lacking when one thinks about other matters. The second is latent awareness, and this awareness is still present even though one is engaged in other matters. When a mother plays with her child, there's an acute awareness of the child. But even when the mother works at a job or is distracted by some other activity, there's a natural latent awareness of the child's existence, right? I think we can relate to that idea, that they're never completely out of our minds. And this latent awareness remains throughout her entire lifetime and can never be extinguished. It is expressed in commitment, devotion, a feeling of identification, a feeling that I and the baby are one. The infant is the center of gravity of the parents' lives. They feel they cannot live without their child. And that exact description, says the Rav, is true with regards to Torah. That we don't always have that acute awareness, but that the latent awareness is always there, and therefore there is no Hesech Hadat, there is no discontinuity. And that in and of itself, that idea that we're making this bracha once in the morning to last us the entire day, should also inform our day, so that as we are continuing through our day, we have the idea of where our minds are supposed to be. Yeah. And the Rav continues, he says, 4 lines from the bottom, La'asok implies that even when we are mentally involved with something else, we are aware of Torah. This awareness of Torah should become part of one's I awareness. Just as I am always aware of my existence without having to walk around saying I exist, so should I be aware of Torah. So that becomes, and this is sort of what we've been gearing up to with all of our preliminary tefillot in the morning, that we're infusing our day with this awareness of Hashem's existence, our connection to Him, our connection to Torah, and the way it infuses our life. So now I sort of was makdima the ma'ameuchar, but the idea of the importance of the Torah is mentioned in the Gemara in Nedarim, and I want to sort of go through this quickly so we can get to Birchot HaShachar today. But the Gemara in Nedarim says, why is Birchot HaTorah so important? And it's so important, according to the Gemara, that says, "Mipnei ma ein mitzuyin talmidei chachamim latzet talmidei chachamim mibneihem." A lot of times you see talmidei chachamim, their kids aren't talmidei chachamim. And another place it says that the Beit HaMikdash was nechrav because they were not mevarich birchot HaTorah. Right? So all of these, also this Gemara, right, that they didn't make birchot HaTorah. It's pretty severe. Because they were learning Torah, but they just didn't make the bracha. And that again goes back to everything we're trying to do here with building our awareness and building our consciousness of the ideas that we want to carry with us throughout the day. And if we take a look at 8 bet on page 4, we already did the Chatam Sofer, but he questions this idea of that Talmidei Chachamim don't have children who are Talmidei Chachamim, or that the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed because of a lack of saying Birchot HaTorah. And he says, Ela vaday oskin hayu b'Torah tamid. They were always busy with Torah. They were learning Torah. We see in the Navi, in the Mishnah, it says how much they learned Torah. Lefichach hayu chachamim neviim tmehim. They couldn't understand. Ma'al ma'avda ha'aretz. Ad shepirshu HaKadosh Baruch Hu be'atzmo. Shu yodea me'imkei halev. Shelo hayu mevarchim b'Torah tchila. So Hashem had to explain this to them in the quote a pasuk in Eov. What was going on? They knew they were learning Torah. So what's going on? They didn't make the bracha. Klomar, shelo hayta Torah chashuva be'ineihem. Kol kach, shehi ra'oi levarech aleha. We make a bracha on things that are important to us. And Torah was not so important in their eyes. Shelo hayu oskim ba lishma. Again, that word lishma. They weren't osek for its own sake. Umitoch kach hayu mezalzelin beverechata. And therefore they were not careful. They were mezalzel in its bracha. V'hainu lo halchu ba. And therefore, their children in the next generation did not take it up as their own.
What made them learn?
So what made them learn? Well, I can tell you that nowadays, there are many universities that have Bible departments, right? And you have many people who don't believe in God studying the Bible.
It's just for the intellectual...
Exactly, yeah. The intellectual challenge and the what we would call maybe a pilpul, right, or literary analysis and all of these different things. But when we make a bracha, we make it very clear why we're doing it. We might also get, right, that's why an Avel can't learn Torah. We don't learn Torah on Tisha B'Av because we're so sad. We don't want, and Torah gives us a chiyus, gives us a simcha. So there is certainly benefits to learning Torah. But when we make the bracha, we make a statement. And that statement is, we're doing this lishma, we're doing this in order to be connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because He gave us the Torah, because this is and that it's not only for the practical purpose of keeping a certain mitzvah, because we know that we can keep many, many mitzvot and not think about them at all. Right? We just sort of go by rote. Mitzvah anashim melumada, it's called. But when we want to connect with Hashem, when we say, I'm doing this act, whatever it is, in order to connect with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then we make a bracha. And if we take Torah and we don't make the bracha before we learn it, then what we're saying is, this is for me. This is not to connect to Hashem. This is not because there's some, I'll learn Torah, then I'll learn Shakespeare, and then I'll learn math, it's all the same. And so that is the basis of the problem. Okay. So I just want to take a break for a minute from the brachot, to go to the psukim and the Mishnah and the Gemara that we say afterwards. Now, it was mentioned that we say these in order to be Mekayim, right? Just in case we don't have time to learn, and there's this dayah to show we're already learning. So out of all the psukim in the Torah, and that of all the Mishnayot and out of all the Sugyot in Gemara, we have a selection here. And I want to take a look at the importance of these because obviously we could have said, okay, we make our Berachot Torah, we could say Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim v'et haaretz. Good, that's a pasuk. But we dafka have Birkat Kohanim chosen, and we have the two Elu Dvarim chosen. So I want to just take a couple of minutes to discuss some ideas that may have inspired Chazal to put those in the text of the Siddur as the Psukim and as the Mamrei Chazal that we are learning right after these brachot. So first of all, we have Birkat Kohanim. Okay. And this is right after we've said the bracha of Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Ha'amim. That's the Brit Avot. V'natan lanu et Torato. That's Har Sinai. And we say Baruch Ata Hashem Noten HaTorah. Noten HaTorah is in the present, right now. So given that, we're getting sort of a springboard. And we have a springboard into the Psukim. And the Psukim that are chosen are Birchot HaTorah. So, the Birchat Kohanim. Any ideas why maybe this was chosen?
So that we are important, significant. The Birkat Kohanim isn't for everyone, it's specifically for the Jews.
Okay, yeah, very good. So, the Kohanim, I think, taking what you said just one step further, have been chosen, just like Am Yisrael has been chosen. The Kohanim have been chosen from among Am Yisrael in order to bring bracha, bring shalom, make a connection, if you will, by their avodah in the Beit HaMikdash. And this is the bracha that they give to Am Yisrael. Right? And I heard a beautiful explanation years ago, and I'm not going to be able to say it b'shem Omro because I don't remember who I heard it from, but it's not mine. And it goes like this: it's that each pasuk of Birchat Kohanim is a request and a request for something and then a protection. So Yivarechecha Hashem v'yishmerecha. What's v'yivarechecha? In general, we think Yivarechecha is that we need our physical sustenance. Right? That's all the brachot in the Torah we've mentioned. Right? Whether it's to enable us to do mitzvot, right? It's our expense account. But Yivarechecha Hashem v'yishmerecha. What's v'yishmerecha? Protect us from what? Protection from, it sounds like almost like protection from the bracha. Hashem bless us. Yivarechecha Hashem v'yishmerecha.
If we have too much of that, it can go to our head, we can become haughty, we can use it in the wrong way.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So we need that balance. And then on the other hand, Ya'er Hashem panav elecha v'chuneka. What's Ya'er? What's the or of Hashem? Ya'er Hashem panav elecha. Hashem should shine His light on us, right? What's the or of Hashem? Ner mitzvah, the Torah or. Right, the or of Hashem is Torah. So Hashem gives us, so we're asking Him, or Hashem is giving to us, right, the bracha of Torah. But what do we ask for? V'chunecha. We're going to get back to that idea of chen in the next section. Mm-hmm. But we need the chen. We need to have that ability to find chen, favor and grace in people's eyes and Hashem's eyes, that the Torah knowledge does not get to our heads either. Right? Because we can have that situation as well.
It can turn, if you use it the wrong way, it could turn people off, and that does not bring chen.
Yeah. And the idea of someone getting up and giving a beautiful lecture or Torah or whatever, and then they think that they deserve lots of kavod. The ideal is that the Talmid Chacham receives kavod as a gesture in order to give kavod to the Torah that he knows, not to him as an individual per se. And then finally, Yisa Hashem panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. When we have a physical bracha and a spiritual bracha, very often they can compete, right? We're torn in different directions, and I think we all feel that in our daily lives. And the bracha of the Kohanim is v'yasem lecha shalom, that we have that harmony in our lives, and that idea of we're getting from Hashem the spiritual, we're getting the physical, we're getting the spiritual, and that we have a harmonization of the two. That's a very important way to start our day. So these are the psukim that are chosen for the Torah Shebichtav part of the Birchat Kohanim. Next, we move on to the Mishnah in Peah. And the Mishnah says, Elu dvarim she'en lam shi'ur. These are the things that have no measure, right? Everything in the Torah, we're told how much and how much time and what quantity and so on. These things, list of 5 things, have no required amount, meaning there's no minimum and there's no maximum. Pe'ah, the corner of the field that we leave for the aniyim. Bikurim, the first fruits that we bring. Re'ayon, that's the korban that we bring when we go up 3 times a year to the Beit HaMikdash. Korban Re'iyah. Gemilut Chasadim, right? Kindness to others. And Talmud Torah. So what about these things? There are things that have no shir, no minimum, no maximum. Right? Chazal sometimes put in a certain amount, but really there's no amount. So there's an idea from Rav Zusha that when we are doing all kinds of other things in our lives, we want all of those things to be with us through Torah, and that the lens that we see is through Torah, and therefore Talmud Torah has no shi'ur, because the only way it's valuable is if all these other things, the tzedakah that we give through Pe'ah, the bikurim, right, the acceptance of kedusha through the bikurim, and the ra'ayon, going to the Beit HaMikdash, right, wanting that connection with Hashem, and the Gemilut Chasadim, our connection with other people, they're all valuable when we wrap them in Talmud Torah, and we say this is all, we want to be a whole person. And then the Talmud Torah has meaning. So again, we're going back to the idea of the Birchot Torah, that we have a full package. That we're not solely focused on Torah, we're focused on Torah in that latent sense as well as the acute sense that Rav Soloveitchik talks about. Okay. Moving on to the Elu Dvarim. She'adam ochel poratehem ba'olam hazeh ve'akeren kayemet lo la'olam haba. What happens there? A list of things that we get rewarded for in this world, but don't worry, we still have the reward in the next world. It's not taken away from us. And we have a whole list. Kibud Avvaim, honoring parents, and Gemilut Chasadim, and Hashkamat Beit HaMidrash Shacharit V'Arvit, making sure to go to shul, to daven and to learn. Hachnasat Orchim, bringing in guests. Bikur Cholim, visiting the sick. Hachnasat Kala, taking care of the needs of the Kala, the young couple. Levayat Hamit, burial of a maid. And Iyun Tfilah, focus in Tfilah. And Hava'at Shalom Ben Adam L'Chavero, making peace. V'Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam. And again, we're learning. So what is this list all about? Take a look for a minute at that list. It's in Gimel, the second Gimel, in source 1, on page 1. We have this list of items. And we have a reward for them in this world and the next world. See if there's anything that you can, any common thread
That's right, they're all good things.
They are all good things.
It's a combination. It's sort of like Ben Adam Chavero, but they're all sort of equal to Ben Adam Makom in a way.
Okay, do you want to explain that?
Because Kibur Ava'im, Gemilut Chasadim, in other words, and Hachnasat Orchim, Bikur Cholim, Hachnasat Kala, Levayat Hamet, and it's interwoven with the Beit Midrash and the Tefillah and Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam. In other words, it's almost like there's no separation between what you do bein Adam L'Chavero to what is ben Adam L'Makom. In other words, it's Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam. In other words, it's one and the same practically.
Yeah. Okay, so it's beautiful. And Rav Kook takes what you said just one step further, and he says each one of these, actually, not just that it goes back and forth, but that each one of these has an element of Ben Adam Makom and Ben Adam Chaveru. If we look, Kibur Ava'im, right, when we honor our parents, we're honoring Hashem. The Gemara tells us that Hashem is a partner in the creation of man, right? There's the mother, the father, and Hashem. Mm-hmm. And so we're also acknowledging Hashem's, we exist because of our parents, and we're part of this eternal chain, and that's connecting this world to the next world. Gemilut Chasadim, right, we're learning that chesed from the chesed of Hashem, the chesed that Hashem shows to the Avot, the chesed that Hashem shows to us. Yeah.
Also, I just want to say, also the idea that Leviyat HaMeit is included in that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's also like the mate is not getting anything, does not feel anything by what you are doing for them. So it's also...
I'm not sure about that until it's actually
there. But the whole concept...
I'm saying the whole concept, it's not something that you see. You see, when you're Kibur Ava'im, you sort of see and feel the back and forth, the Gemilut Chasadim.
Yes, it's called Chesed Shel Emet, right?
Because it's Chesed Shel Emet. It doesn't matter if you're getting anything in return, or it's more also Klapei Mala, the respect for this Briat Hashem.
Yes.
And that person,
and
without
it's also,
feeling,
if we think about it, really, there's no reason that we should bury the dead, right? Meaning, if we say that there's no connection, then okay, the gufa is used up. It's okay, put it on the garbage heap. Right? So the idea of levayat hamet is saying, no, there's a connection. There's a connection between what we're doing here and the eternal world. Right? There's not this just, okay, who cares? No, it doesn't matter. No, there's a real connection. The same way that our parents connect us to Kadosh Baruch Hu, and Gemilut Chasadim connects us to the wider community as well as to Hashem. Beit HaMidrash, right? We need a minyan, so it's connecting us to the community as well as to Hashem, coming together. Hachnasat Orchim and Bikur Cholim, right? The Gemara talks about the effect that has on a person. Lanetzach. There's so many stories of kindness is done for people, and they say, I was about to go and do something crazy and kill myself, and you came along and you showed me that you cared, right? So these kinds of things, Levayat Hamet is an ultimate connection of this world to the next world, of saying that no, it matters, even though I'm not getting anything back. And certainly, Iyun Tefillah and Hava'at Shalom Ben Adam L'Chavero, right? Whatever we do in this temporary world, but it brings peace, and the increase of peace affects the upper realms, right? And finally, Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam. So again, the idea that this is not saying, and people sometimes are confusing
If
this.
you're learning, then you don't have to do these things.
Exactly. That's not what it.
You
That's
don't
not
have to
what it
stop
says.
your learning to do these things because it's equal. It's like almost like you're doing it already because you're learning.
Exactly. So that's not what this is saying. What this is saying, though, is that there's a value in Talmud Torah in bringing out all of these things. And in addition, if we take a look quickly at source 9 on page 4, Rav Kook in his Perush on the Sidur, Olat Raya, he says, "V'Talmud Torah keneged kulam, ein lanu davar ba'olam shehu kol kach kaful be'erko." There's nothing in the world that is so doubled in its value, meaning it has double value. Choder l'chol chelkei hachayim hazmaniyim. Talmud Torah penetrates, and this goes back to what Rav Soloveitchik said about the latent existence of Torah in our lives. It penetrates every area of our temporal lives. To make them better in every way, to elevate them, to make them more adin, fine, refined. V'oroha elyon mekif kol olmei olamim. And it also wraps us up in the upper world, all of the beauty and all of the eternal values of Talmud Torah. Okay, so the idea of Talmud Torah Keneged Kula means it is the ultimate way to connect us through this world to the Olam HaNitzchi, to the eternal world. It doesn't mean that you're patur from doing all sorts of other mitzvot and helping society.
So you wouldn't know to do these things if you didn't learn Torah. In other words,
exactly. It's saying that through Talmud Torah, you are going to want to jump up and do all of these things because it increases our connection to the Olam HaNitzchi, to the eternal world. And finally, I just want to go back to the V'ha'arevna and again quote the Rav. The idea of V'ha'arevna, he says in source 10, means the Torah should fascinate us. It should allure us. It should become sweet in our mouths. In V'ha'arevna, we spell out the ideal of Mesorah, continuity, so that we, our descendants, the descendants of your people, the house of Israel, may all know your name and study your Torah for its own sake. The idea of passing on, transmitting, perpetuating Divrei Torah, of what I call belonging to the Mesorah community, is not realized through an intellectual act, but through emotional involvement. And I think that's really what we've been talking about here, that emotional aspect, the aspect that connects us to each other, the aspect that connects us vertically and horizontally through the generations into the community. And finally, you can pass on mathematics because it is very useful for your child to know mathematics or physics. But when it is not a question of usefulness, it is impossible to pass on an axiological system without loving it, without being dedicated and devoted to it. And that really bespeaks the idea of, because the Chachamim were not making Birchot HaTorah, they were not understanding and internalizing the importance of Torah as a way to live and as a way to feel. And that's really what the Rebbe is talking about here. So with that, we'll close Birchot HaTorah.
I find it a little hard to imagine that in a time of the Beit HaMikdash, when there's a Beit HaMikdash, that people don't understand. Everybody wants the Beit HaMikdash.
So the problem is, right,
it's like,
the idea of the Navi says Hechal Hashem, Hechal Hashem, Hechal Hashem, right? That what was everyone saying? Everyone's saying we have Beit HaMikdash, we have a lucky charm,
and that will
right?
protect them.
And that will protect them. And when we see, when we are at war with the Plishtim, and the Plishtim take the Aron,
Right.
because the Aron was considered, again, like a lucky
Right.
charm. It was, an object that possessed some sort of power. And I think in our lives we have all sorts of things that fill that role, that if we aren't careful, that we can say, okay, I did this, I checked the box, I did this, I went to shul, I heard Megillah on Purim, I ate the matzah, and that if we're not internalizing it, that if we're not connecting to it on a really emotional, visceral level, then we're missing something so fundamental. And and so it's an extreme example, right? But the idea is that when you have those korbanot, and you say, okay, well, we learned all the halachot. They're intricate halachot. You can learn Masechet Zvachim, Masechet Menachot, right? And you learn all the minutia of how to exactly do it, or the Kohanim follow, and they're not thinking of what they're doing.
It's all about taking it for granted, so to speak.
Yeah, and also the idea of what we said, that a Talmid Chacham is Chas v'Shalom never supposed to say, that I deserve kavod because of my knowledge, because I'm such a brilliant person, because I'm such a smart lecturer, and so on, right? And unfortunately, we saw it, and especially in my Cheney, the Kohanim were very much doing that, right? They were they were getting rich off of the kahuna, basically, and unfortunately, we see people today who do it, right? So that sort of attitude is something that we can slip into, and we have to constantly, I think, be very strongly aware, and that awareness is key, because otherwise, it's nice to have nice things. It's nice to have a physically comfortable life, and so on. And at what point do we say, okay, wait a minute, we're losing focus. We have to refocus. We have to, and every so often you hear these different takanot that come out from different people in the Haredi world, especially, right? With, you can't make your wedding too fancy. You can't make this too, because we move up and up.
Emphasis on something.
Yeah, and then we say, wait, refocus. And it's hard. I think it's a continual challenge. Okay, continuing on in our meeting the challenge. We're going to discuss Birchot HaShachar. And
Thank you. I have one.
what? Oh, okay. And the Birchot HaShachar, so so often we find things in Torah, in Halakha, and then all of a sudden I read an article, and it's like, we just discovered something new. And we think, wait, that sounds familiar. That sounds strangely familiar. So I read about, gratitude journaling. And it's a very worthwhile endeavor on a personal level. I've done it occasionally. I'm not so good. I have friends that do it, say that changed their lives.
What to be thankful for and to write it down.
What?
What to be thankful for.
Yeah,
and to write it
yeah.
down.
And I have a friend that does every day. She sits down, 5 things. She has to write 5 things that she's grateful for. And my sister has a friend, 100 things. She writes 100 things every day. She said in the beginning it took her hours, and now she does it, and it can be the smallest thing, and as you get more comfortable with it, I guess, you get more refined with the things that you find to be grateful for. And I was thinking about it today, that this is Birchot HaShachar. Birchot HaShachar are our gratitude journal every day.
Yocheved gave me a ride to the shirt today. Thank you very much.
Every Motzei Shabbos, when I turn on my dishwashers, I feel that there should be a bracha for dishwashers.
Wow, dishwashers too.
Well, yeah, milk and
Wow,
yeah,
wow,
thank
wow.
God. Yeah, so it's a true bracha, right?
Yeah.
And and the washing machine, when I'm going to go down to the river, it's like, oh, thank you, right?
Yeah.
So these are things that we can easily take for granted, right? It's actually like, oh, I have to do the laundry, do the dishes, but no, like, so wow, like, I look at that.
Yeah, that you can hang your laundry outside.
Right.
That's amazing. Not now, of course, but other days.
So
We have dryers.
Huh?
We all have dryers.
I am here now in Israel for the first time of my whole life. I have a dryer and I hardly use it. I always can hang it outside.
American thing is to use it.
Yeah, but I'm not
Summer.
American. I'm a simple Dutch girl. So,
Even simple Americans.
Me too.
Okay.
use
Anyhow,
the
so
dryer.
the idea of the brachot.
My mom used to do it. I'm gonna do it.
So the idea of the brachot, though, is really to get us started, I think, on our day. Once we've already said, and different sidurim have different orders, but we've already woken up with, barely an eye open, said modeh ani. we've washed our hands, we've, we made ourselves sort of presentable to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the Al Netilat Yadayim, the Asher Yatzar, and the Elokai Neshama, and Adon and Matovu, we enter the shul, we are aware of Hashem's presence, Adon Olam, Yigdal, we've been building up to this. Birchot Torah give us an awareness of really what life is supposed to be about. And we take a moment now and we have a list, right? And sometimes if we're not paying attention, then we can even say, wait, where was I? Because it's Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem. And so we have to go back to our shiur on Baruch Atah Hashem, Elokeinu, Melech HaOlam, right? We're talking each bracha, each one. It's hard when you're saying one after another. But we're in the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and we're making these brachot. And these brachot, we won't go through the Gemara on page 2, but the source for most of these brachot is Masechet Brachot Daf Samech, on source 2 on page 2. And the way it's phrased in the Gemara, we really are meant to be saying these things as they happen, in real time, right? Ki shema kol tarnagola lema baruch asher natan l'sachli v'ina lavchim miyom v'layla. When you hear the rooster crow, you should say the bracha of blessed who is he who gave the understanding to the sechvi, usually translated as the rooster, but we'll discuss that, to distinguish between day and night. Ki patach enei lema baruch pokeach ivrim. When you open your eyes, you say baruch pokeach ivrim, give sight to the blind, and so on throughout the list. Right? When you do each activity, you make the corresponding bracha. And the 3 Shelo Asani brachas are not in this Gemara, but they're in source 3 in the Gemara in Menachot, in a slightly different girsa, which we don't say. Taina haya Remeir Omer Chayav Adam Avrech Shalosh Brachot B'chol Yom Elu Hen She'asani Yisrael Shelo Asani Isha Shelo Asani Bor. Rav Acha Bar Yaakov Shemei Levrei Dahava Ka Mevarech Shelo Asani Bor Amar Le Kulei Hayunami Amar Le Ve'ela Mai Mevarech Shelo Asani Aved Haynu Isha Eved Zil Tfei. So he says basically that we make these brachot. A person has to make these 3 brachot who she'asani Yisrael, that he made me a Jew, that he did not make me a woman, and that he did not make me a bor, an ignoramus, usually translated. And Rav Acha Bar Yaakov Shamei Livrei, he hears his son making this bracha, Davekam Mevarech, and Shelo Asani Bor, that's the one he has a problem with. And he says, why are you saying this? Why is this bracha appropriate? And he answers back, if not, then what should I say? He says, you should say Shelo Asani Eved. And if you're going to say that, he says, Shelo Asani Eved, Hainu Isha. An Eved and an Isha are the same. He says, no, an Isha is, Eved Zil Tfei, a slave is lower than an Isha, so you should say both. We're going to get to this, but we're sticking it in here as being controversial, right? But we're going to see that it's really not. But throwing it out there, that it's not from the same Gemara, it's from a different Gemara in Menachot. But in any case, the order of these brachot seems to be, the idea of them is that we're saying them as we are progressing through our day or through our morning routine, and as such, we would say each one. And I think that would make it much easier to understand that we're being grateful for each thing. As you do it, you say it. Right?
I did it when I started with Judaism. I did it really every morning like that. When I was doing it, I'd say it, and then I'm doing it. So it's more. And then you come here, and of course you learn like no, blah blah blah. Okay. So, but it had really special meaning doing it.
Sure.
Right away.
Yeah. I mean, when we say Hamotzi Lechem Min Haaretz, and then we eat, we're holding the bread. It's right in front of us. We understand b'diuk what we are making a bracha on. Mm-hmm. So. And the Rambam says in source 4, he says, Shmona Esrei brachot elu, ein lahem seder ela mevarech kol echat mehem al davar shabracha bishvilo bish'ato. Right? Each, they have no order, says the Rambam, these brachot, these 18 brachot. You should make the bracha on each one as you do it. And he continues. In halacha chet, and he says, Ketzad, he goes further than that. He says, Lan biksuto, let's say you went to sleep in your clothing. so you're not getting dressed. Eino mevarech kisha omid malbish haromim, right? When you get up, you don't say malbish haromim, that who clothes naked, because you're already dressed. So you didn't do it. You don't say the bracha. Halach yachef, if you go around barefoot, eino mevarech she'asa likrot tzurki, right? The she'asita likrot tzurki. You don't make the bracha of shoes, she'asa likrot tzurki. We're going to go through the brachot one by one. And similarly on Yom Kippur, he says, right, and he goes so far in Halacha Ted to say, Nagua am berov areinu levarech brachot elu zo achar zo beveit hakneset, ben nitchayvu behen, ben lo nitchayvu behem. He says most people already in the time of the Rambam, this is the 12th century in Spain, that people were making these brachot in shul all at once, whether or not they had the thing happen to them, right? Whether or not they did that thing. V'ta'utu ve'ein ra'oi la'asot ken v'lo yivarech bracha ela im ken nitchayev ba. He says this is a mistake. You shouldn't do this. You should only make each bracha if you're chayav in that particular thing, that if you experienced it. And otherwise, according to the Rambam, it would be a bracha levatala. This is not how we hold, obviously. And the on page 4, the Seder of Rav Amram Gaon, this is earlier than the Rambam, this is 9th century. He says basically that because of Tenufat Yadayim Askaniyot, because our hands are not clean, and also because of the fact that people were illiterate, they have the Shliach Tzibur say all of these brachot in shul, and that it would be impossible, basically, to do otherwise because people wouldn't know the brachot, people were not as educated, and so on. So we have a very early source already for saying them all at once in shul. And the real question is, it's very nice to say people didn't know the brachot, but we have to have some permission for doing that, right? I can't say, oh, I don't know the bracha of she'akol niyeh b'dvaro. Could you make it for me now? And in an hour, I'm going to eat my candy, right? That's what doesn't work. So the question is, what kinds of brachot are these?
Candy for them too.
What?
I said we should eat the candy for
Right.
them too.
So.
And let the calories count for the other person.
So what kinds of brachot are these? If we can have the idea of Rambam Gaon and others, that we can make them way after the experience occurred, yeah. And the Ramban that I brought even quotes the Yerushalmi. In the Yerushalmi it says, let's say a person was in the restroom at the time when he heard thunder. The bracha to become thunder. So the halacha is, if you can exit and toch kedei dibur in a very short amount of time, a few seconds, you can exit and make the bracha. But if not, then you don't make the bracha. By the time you get out, it's too late. Too much time has passed. So we see that there's a connection between making the brachot and the amount of time. So the question really becomes, what kinds of brachot are these? And why are we allowed to do this?
They've happened anyway. They've happened anyway. It's like de facto. They've already happened, or you've already opened your eyes. You've already gotten dressed. You've already this or that. So you've already, yes, done them, but it's not, that specific second, like with the,
Okay, so the Rambam says it is, but obviously we hold like what you're saying, that it's not that specific second, but we need some sort of a halachic understanding of what it is to make it not necessary to make the bracha right next to the event. And also,
like they're generic, they're...
Yeah.
It's not, they're specific, but they're like generic.
Yeah, okay, so and not only that, but what you're saying is also supporting the idea that we make these brachot, even if I didn't hear a rooster, usually I don't, by the way. I don't know you guys.
No roosters.
But for even if I am not doing, right, or didn't, some of these brachot, right, so I can still make them in shul. So there's an idea, and this is brought in the Ran in source 5b on page 4, And he says that these brachot, נראה מזה שאין ברכת השבח אלא בתוך כדי דיבור. Okay, so if you have a ברכת השבח, praising Hashem, that has to be תוך כדי דיבור. That has to be said very close to the event, like the lightning or the thunder. תוך כדי דיבור של ראייה ושמיעה. אלא יש לומר שסדר הברכות הללו שמברכים בשחרית בבית הכנסת, ברכת השבח הן על מנהגו של עולם. So he sort of sticks in those extra words of minhago shel olam, and that's exactly really what you were saying, the generic idea that these are things, this is the way of the world. So we're making a bracha for things that are sort of the way that things happen, as the Rav Soloveitchik puts it, as the universal routine of experience. These are experiences that most people have in the world, normal things that happen, and therefore we can make a bracha on them together. And so what we're thanking Hashem for is the way that things normally happen.
And it's still even if you're not getting dressed at the moment that you're making the bracha, it's still evident. You can still see the proof.
Yes, but what the Rambam says is, let's say you slept in your clothing, so that day you didn't get dressed. So you wouldn't make the bracha according to the Rambam.
But you're still dressed. You see those clothes on
yes.
you. You are not naked.
Yes.
And so
something
that, like the thunder, there's no evidence of it anymore. You know
correct.
What I'm saying?
So that idea is saying that's the minhago shel olam. This is the way the world works. People are dressed. People walk. People see. People, right? So these ideas make it sort of an even more impressive early version of that gratitude journal of saying the things that we don't think about. It doesn't even have to be right at the act. Maybe I didn't even do it today, but just the concept of that this structure exists. Right? And that idea, says the Ran and the Ramban in 5c, those bring us to the ability to make these brachot not right when they happen. Okay, so we're sort of making these brachot on the Chasdei Hashem rather than on a specific manifestation of something God did. And we'll close with B'ezrat Hashem. Next time we'll go into the details of each bracha, but I'd like to close with the Chovot HaLevavot. The Chovot HaLevavot, Bachya ibn Bakuda in 11th century Spain, and he wrote this Chovot HaLevavot in order to explain Ibn Bakuda, Bachya ibn Bakuda. And he wrote this Chovot HaLevavot in order to explain the connections that we're meant to have with Hashem. And these sections are Sha'ar, each one is called a Sha'ar. And this is taken from Sha'ar HaBechina. Sha'ar HaBechina, what does it mean, lavchin?
Differentiate.
Yeah, to discern, to differentiate. So he's explaining how we make havchanot, how we make differentiations and discern things in our lives. And he brings a mashal. And he says, he wants people to understand Hashem's chesed, Hashem's goodness to us. And this is the second of three ways, the problems of why people don't appreciate what God does for them. The first, he says, is basically that they're too busy. People are busy earning a living and, what we might call the rat race, and just life is too busy. The third is people have tzarot, and people are mutrad, and life is difficult. This is the second. What does he say? So he brings a mashal, and he says, there was a baby, an orphan, and a couple finds this baby, and they decide to adopt him. And they raise him, and they do everything for him like it's their own child, and they adopt him. And they've spent their whole life taking care of this child. And then the child gets older, and there is a certain person, they find out, is in jail. And they say, okay, we have a little extra money, we can redeem him from jail, we can get him back on his feet and return him to his family. So he asks, who has more gratitude to this couple? The baby that they adopted, or this captive, this asir who they redeemed from prison?
I think the last one.
What?
The last one.
You would think the last one.
Mhm.
Even though they gave a certain amount of money and like sent him on his way.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
didn't.
They gave him his freedom.
Yeah, and,
Yeah.
and that's a good.
And the baby they gave. I mean, from the time as a baby, every day, every second,
It's like it's like a child when they're a child.
Yeah.
I mean, when they're
When they
older,
grow,
they
then
learn to
they're
appreciate
gratitude,
it.
yeah.
But a child, it's like
It's
just
normal.
it's the way of the world. It's the way
Yeah,
of the world. That's
exactly.
what parents do.
So that's the mashal that he gives, and basically he says, 4 lines from the bottom, the vatinok. Vatinok lo hevin ma'alat tova alav. Right, the baby doesn't understand how much goodness has been done for him. Even though he grows up eventually and he starts to understand things, but but he, from the time he was a baby, he was always used to this treatment, this being taken care of. Certainly everyone would agree that this couple has given more to the baby than to the one-time redemption of this prisoner. And certainly this child, who's now grown up, needs to have so much more appreciation. Brings a pasuk from Hosea, but the idea of this is the Chasdei Hashem, that we become so accustomed with these very mundane activities that we do every day, opening our eyes, seeing, walking, getting dressed, the most mundane things. And we say, wait, we can't even begin to approach Hashem until we acknowledge all of these things. And that was also, sort of sending us on our way into this day of an awareness of everything around us and the gifts that we have. So at Hashem, next time we'll finish up Birchot HaShachar and we'll wrap it all up.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.